Hi guys, Brian from Boas here. Late last year I was really fortunate to add a pair of snakes that had been one of my dream species for many years, and that's the Sri Lankan python. And so believe it or not, these guys are now a year old. It's been quite a year. I want to give you guys an update, show you how they're doing, and say a little bit about my experience working with these great Sri Lankan pythons. And so this is my male, who I call Hannibal, and you can see the beautiful pattern that this guy has. These really jagged, irregular looking saddles, beautiful chocolate brown saddles on top of a caramel background with this great grayish tan side coloration. And then of course what they're known for, the pinkish orangish head. These guys are sometimes known as pink-headed pythons. They're classified as Python malaris along with the Indian python. They were formerly known as Python malaris pimbora, a separate subspecies, but not all herpetologists recognize the pimbora subspecies today, although a lot of hobbyists still call them pimbora. But they're definitely quite a bit different from the Burmese and from the Indian pythons. And so these guys are now probably about 6.5 feet or so. I was hoping to try to measure them for this video, but every time I try to measure snakes using the string technique, when I repeat it, it's off by 6 or 8 inches, and I figure they're about 6.5 feet or so. I don't need to know the exact size, but this guy is now a year old, so you can see it's quite a bit of growth for a 1-year-old boa or python. My boas would be about, many of them would be 4 or 5 years old by the time they were this size. So you can see they definitely grow a hell of a lot faster than the boas. I would expect that this guy is going to get to be about 10 feet or so. We'll have to see. It'll be interesting. Maybe I'll do a 2-year birthday video and we can see how big he is at 2 years. I'd say he's probably going to be about 9 feet or so at 2 years, going by his current growth rate. And I've really enjoyed working with these animals. They're definitely different than boas. They're very interactive. They recognize you through the cage. They watch you through the glass. They definitely know who the keeper is. Whereas with boas, sometimes boas are just kind of sitting there. They don't really indicate that they're aware of your presence. But definitely not with these pythons. And they just seem very intelligent. And they're also quite muscular, but their body just feels different. A boa feels kind of like crude muscle. It's very kind of chiseled and almost a little bit more crude, whereas these pythons have a much more silky appearance, or silky feel to them. The muscle feels kind of silky, but also very strong. And the scales kind of feel really smooth. It's just a really cool experience to handle these guys. And I found that they're quite active when I take them out. And sometimes they even hiss a little bit, but I haven't seen anything like aggression, or they don't seem defensive at all. They've never struck or bitten me, or displayed any kind of behavior leading me to believe that they're going to try to bite me. Of course, I'm always really careful when I take them out because these are a larger snake and I don't want to get bitten. I have been handling them more often. I try to handle them every day if I can, just because I really like holding these guys, and because they're going to get bigger, I want to have a snake that is accustomed to handling. So when they get to be 10, 11 feet, they're not going to be as difficult to work with. And I've been feeding them also more often. I feed them about once a week. Right now they're mostly eating extra large rats. So they do seem to be growing quite appropriately given the feeding. You might recall I only feed my boas about half as often as these pythons, but the pythons grow quite a bit faster. They have higher metabolisms, and the more frequent feeding is quite appropriate. And I actually had a Burmese python, one of my first big snakes, when I was still in high school. They got up to about 9 feet in 1 year, so that snake I was feeding a lot. I think I was feeding it at one point, 2 or 3 times a week. So I think this is a good growth rate for these guys, feeding them once a week, and they grow to be about 6.5 feet the first year. But great animals, really been enjoying them. So we'll put this guy back and I'll show you a quick look at the female. This is my female Sri Lankan python, who I call Clarice. And she's overall pretty similar looking to the male, although I would say that maybe her head is a little bit more pink and orange, and her markings are a little bit more blocky, a little less irregular, but overall they're quite similar. And she's about the same size as the male. She might get a little bit bigger as adults, as the females are typically a few feet longer than the males, but so far she's been growing at about the same rate. Overall, her behavior is pretty similar as well. But just really great animals to work with, and I've really enjoyed them. And it's been great because for many years I had nothing but boas. And I always had this list of species that would be a dream of mine to work with. I figured I would never get the opportunity to work with most of them because I'm so committed to the boas that I don't have room for anything else. And then the opportunity arose to get these Sri Lankan pythons, and I really couldn't resist, and I'm glad that I got them. And it's great specializing in one type of animal, and I wouldn't be able to do what I do if I didn't specialize in the boas. But then I often think about, wouldn't it be cool also to have a more diverse collection and just have, maybe one or two examples of a lot of different types of reptiles. Focus less on the breeding, more on the collecting and enjoying and studying. And that's kind of where I'm headed. So I probably see myself doing less and less breeding in the future. And there are a number of other species I'd like to own eventually. I'm not sure if I'll ever have them, but I can keep dreaming. And I like a lot of different types of pythons, but also other types of snakes, as well as lizards and even turtles. So we'll have to see if I ever end up getting any other types of reptiles. As far as the husbandry, I've been keeping these guys pretty similarly to my boas, other than that I feed them more often. They have cocoa coir substrate, the temperatures are about the same, and the humidity is about the same. And they seem to be doing quite well. She likes to go into my shirt. They like to hide, and a shirt is a nice snug place for them to hide. And right now I have them in 4-foot cages, which they are rapidly outgrowing. I have some 8-foot cages on the way. I believe 8 foot should be sufficient for them as adults. We'll have to see how big they get, but I would imagine they'll be about 10 feet or so as adults. But great animals. I look forward to the next year with them, watching them get even bigger. And overall, it's been a great experience working with these Sri Lankan pythons, and really enjoyable as pets. A lot of people have been asking me if I'm going to breed them. I don't know. I'm really a boa breeder. I'm not a python breeder. Pythons lay eggs, which might seem like it's not that much of a difference, but it is. And I just don't know, because these guys are more like pets to me. It's kind of like your pet dog that you take for a walk every day and you bond with. You probably don't want to think about breeding it. That's kind of a different role that it would have to play. And I kind of look at these pythons as the same thing. But we'll have to see how I feel and how they're doing in a few years' time, and decide whether or not I'm going to breed these animals. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. As always, shoot me any questions you might have. Thanks for watching, and enjoy your reptiles.